Hi, friend. Kathy Weens here, Women's Empowerment and Trauma Recovery Coach. Today, I want to share a story with you about something that happened in my life that gave me a real realization about my own trauma recovery journey. So here's what happened. Well, my daughter and her family is moving from the town that we all lived in together. And we will also be moving from that same town. And we have had a really special time these last 4 years while we all lived in the same town together. My grandson and my granddaughter were both born during that time, and it was just a wonderful time to be together. And that's coming to an end. And so the morning that of the day that they were going to move, my grandson was with us, and he's 3. And we have developed a very special relationship where he has special grandma and grandpa time at the house that we lived in. And so he was there and he was eating a smoothie. And this was another thing, a special thing that we did together. The 3 of us, my husband and I and our grandson, we would make smoothies together. So he was eating his smoothie, but it was time to leave and he hadn't finished it. And so he said, "Here, Grandma, take my smoothie and put it in the fridge and I'll eat it when I come back." Oh, and that just touched my heart because I knew he wasn't going to be coming back to this house. And so that was just sad for me that he didn't realize that, because we were trying, his mom and dad tried to explain it to him, but he's 3. He can't get that this is the last time he's going to be at this house. And so I had some big emotions around that. Now, it's an emotional story. It's sad. It's sad that this special time for our little family is ending. But the reality is, it's a natural, normal thing. He's going to a beautiful new house. He has loving parents. We will still be there for him. We will travel to visit. It's a good thing overall in his life. But I was having some pretty big feelings about it. And one of the things I realize is when I have big feelings about something that maybe doesn't warrant such big feelings, that I need to look into my past and see where that's really coming from. And so that's what I did. I took some time and I paused and I had this realization. So my grandson was leaving this town, his home and our home. And, he had his things there and he was leaving those things too. And so when I was a child, when I was 10 years old, and this is a story I tell in my book, Bars, Dumps, and Other Childhood Hangouts, but when I was 10 years old, I also had to leave a house and a family. But my situation, unlike my grandson's, was not a normal situation. What happened was my biological mother was addicted to alcohol and addicted to men. Although she loved me, she did not take care of me in the way that I should have been cared for. There was a lot of neglect. And so social services were called and a social worker came out. And when she came out, when she came out the first time, my mother hid me in another room and said I wasn't there. And then what she did is she took me to some friends she had that lived farther away to hide me even further so that the social worker could not find me to be taken away. What happened then is the social worker somehow, and to this day I do not know, but she found out where I was at and she came and she took me from the friend's house and took me to a children's home. And that's how I was taken away from my biological mother. Placed in foster care, good foster family, another whole story that I will do a video on at some point. But there were a lot of what I would call big headlines in that story. Being taken away from my mom's abuse, going to a children's home, literally losing an entire family. But what came up for me was a story or a realization that I had not really put together. And so the situation with my grandson and my situation as a child kind of came together. Because what happened was when I went to these friends' house farther away, when I was hidden there, I left everything behind. We were living in a trailer at that time, but I had my things in that trailer. That was my home. And even though there was abuse and neglect, it was still my home. And I always knew the big thing that I had lost my family, my mother that day. But what I hadn't realized is I lost all my things. And so with my grandson leaving our home and knowing he wasn't going to come back, it took me back into that time when I was taken away and I had to leave my home and all of my possessions, and I was never able to come back. And so because I had, like I said before, because I had these big feelings around that little scene of my grandson telling me to put his smoothie in the fridge, I knew it was something from the past. And so that's what it was. The thing from the past was that I had to leave everything behind, not just the people, but also my possessions. And while that was not the big headline of my story, it was a part of it, and it affected me deeply because that's hard for a child to leave everything behind and to never be able to go back to their home. So why am I telling you this story? Well, I want you to think about times when you have big emotions that are actually too big for the situation. And so that's something to pause and to think about. When you have big emotions, think about where might that be coming from? Does it really fit the current situation? I mean, the reality is in my current situation is, yeah, it's sad that, my children are moving, but it's natural, it's normal, it's a good thing for them. But what happened to me as a child was not normal. And so for you to pause and to think about what's happening, and then to remember, when did I feel that in the past? When I was doing my counseling training, one of my professors said that it's important to tell your client to, when we're dealing with big emotions, to think about making a bridge. When did you feel that before in the past? And to make a bridge between the current situation and that past situation, to recognize where it's coming from. Because the reality is those situations are affecting us. We may not always recognize it, so we have to go back and realize what happened in the past that's affecting those big emotions that we're having in the present. So when you're having a big emotion, pause and think about, when have you felt that in the past? And what was going on in that situation? That's a way our inner child is trying to share something with us. A hurt, a pain, something from past trauma and abuse that maybe we haven't recognized. And when we recognize what that is, the next step is to have care and compassion for that younger self, to recognize what they experienced and what they went through, and to care for yourself, because that younger self is yourself. And so to honor those feelings. And like for me, to recognize how hard it was to leave all of my possessions behind, to never be able to go back to the place that had been my home and had all of my possessions, how hard that is. To have care, compassion, and empathy for what I went through. And I would say too, when you recognize what that is, to either do some journaling about it, or better yet, talk to someone about it. So I shared that with my husband, and I plan to share it with some good friends. Because, we need to share our stories. That helps us to alleviate some of that pain. It makes a healing connection for someone else to hear our story and to care for us and to kind of bear that load with us. That's important. But if it doesn't feel safe to share that with someone else, at least journal about it. That's a way of sharing it with yourself. And another thing that's happening when we do that is we're taking that experience from the emotional part of our brain, the limbic system, and we're putting it in the prefrontal cortex, because writing and speaking are forms of language, and language happens in the prefrontal cortex. And when it's up here, we can deal with it in a more logical way. And it's not so, it's not such big emotions. Okay? So first, recognize when you're having these big feelings. And then think about, where does that come from? Where did I feel that in the past? Make that bridge. And care for that younger self. Care for that child, or maybe it was just you as a younger person, a younger adult, but to have compassion and care for what you went through. And then to share that. To share it with a friend, a loved one, or share it with yourself by journaling about it. And then another step that you can take in this process is to think about, how is that affecting you today? So what I realized is, because I had to leave all of those things behind as a child, all of those physical possessions that I had, that makes me hold on to things more today. Now, I'm not a hoarder, but I know I have hoarding tendencies, and I have to battle with that. And I've recognized where some of that comes from, but this is just another piece of that puzzle. And so when I'm trying to get rid of something, and like I said earlier, we're moving too, so we're going through a lot of things and trying to get rid of stuff. So this is going to be really helpful for me right now. But as I'm trying to get rid of things, I can tell myself, Kathy, you're not that little girl that lost everything. You don't have to hang on to this. It's okay to let it go. So I can recognize the feelings that that younger self had, but I can also recognize, this is what I need to do for myself today. I need to let go of things. Okay? So think about how this realization from the past can also help your current life. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you today. This is what this channel is about. It's about helping to empower you by overcoming past traumas and understanding where all this stuff comes from, because there's so much involved when we're dealing with trauma. If you like this video, please share it with someone else, and please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Okay, friends, that's all I have for today. Bye-bye.